Hey everybody, Travis Bowman here. I'm a fingerstyle guitar player and retro video game nerd. Let's do a video game room tour. I've been wanting to do this for a very, very long time. I've been collecting for about 10 years now, and I've gotten some really good deals on some really cool stuff, and video game room tours are just a lot of fun. So let's do it. So let's start with the retro corner, and this is my living room in my house, and this is just one corner of that. There's a lot of stuff behind us over there that we're going to look at a little bit later on, but this is the retro corner, and my idea for this is just a place that you can go back to and just chill out in this nice comfy recliner chair and revisit video game consoles the way that we used to back in the day. So every single one of these 4 video game consoles are ones that I really enjoyed from childhood, and they all have their respected disk drives in them. There's no ODEs or anything like that. So you actually have to get up and put the game in the system if you want to play it, which is, you know, a really nice thing to go back and revisit. So this right here is my Sony PVM 2030. Now I did a video on this by itself. If you want to check that out, you can find that in the link in my description below underneath this video. But this is a professional video monitor. They're really, really popular with the nerds like me, but back in the day they used to be primarily used in hospitals for monitoring equipment there, and you could also find them in, you know, TV stations and stuff like that. But everything went digital, and so these are obsolete, but they're still coveted heavily for retro video games. This is so cool, is it not? This is a light-up Dreamcast sign that my wonderful girlfriend Emily got for me. I think it was for my birthday, wasn't it? And I just love it right here. And you know, somebody made this, which is also a really cool thing. This came from NYXI. And if we can find it, we'll put a link in the description. There's another sign that we're gonna look at over there here in a little bit. I don't know, it's cute. It's cute, and it's a Dreamcast thing, so I'm a Dreamcast nerd and I love things like that. So speaking of Dreamcast things, this right here is a 3D printed VMU holder that was made by my friend Billy. I kind of added these little numbers right here in the design. I told him we should probably throw that in there. But to be clear, he did all of this by himself. I was just the consultant on actual usage of this thing right here. But all my VMUs go in these little holders right there. It's really, really cool, and it's a good display piece too, and it also fits your jump pack, rumble pack, whatever the hell you want to call it. I just kind of set it right there because I do like to go back and play some Dreamcast games, and this is a great way and a great place to do such a thing. Let's talk about this device that we have up here. If you're going to connect consoles and stuff to the PVM, then you need to know about RGB SCART, and again, I touched on this a little bit in this dedicated video about this retro corner over here on my channel. SCART is a European connection, video connection that we never got over here in the States. It has the highest video quality for analog consoles, and that's exactly what we have right here. This came from AliExpress, which is crazy because for the longest time, your best bet was to get the G-SCART, which is a very, very expensive SCART switcher. But that's how all of these consoles are connected to this PVM, is with this SCART switcher, and it's automatic. So you don't have to get up and, you know, mess with any of the settings. It's just automatic. So anytime you turn on a console, it will pop up on the screen, as long as you don't have, you know, 2 consoles on at the same time. So before we move on to the next section of the game room, let's check out the consoles that I have on this rack right here. Sega Dreamcast, my favorite console of all time, and this is the Sports Edition Sega Dreamcast. I picked this one up fairly recently. It's just a super cool black sleek design. I'm really, really happy to have that with the matching controller. We've got the Sony PS1 over here, which has the attachable screen. So when you turn that guy on, it pops up not only on the TV, but also on that little screen down there, which is super freaking cool. And I did a video on this too, if you want to check that out on my channel. The video quality on this little teeny tiny screen is unfreaking believable. It's crazy how crisp and clean that it actually looks on this console here. So I've had this PVM for quite some time now, and I really do enjoy it. It's a really, really nice way to check out some retro video games. And you know, like I said, I went into more depth on this in my separate video, so if you want to learn more about this, you can definitely check that video out too. But before you do that, let's take a look at the video game collection that we have over here. I actually found this on the side of the road, believe it or not. So this is where I keep all of my collection of the Dreamcast games, as well as the PlayStation 1 games, and I've got some CDs and stuff down there too. Some heavy hitters over here that I've collected over the years. Marvel vs. Capcom 2, highly coveted Dreamcast game. One of the best fighting games ever made, in my opinion, and I'm sure a lot of people will agree with that. One of my personal favorites, Jet Grind Radio or Jet Set Radio, anywhere else. This is one of those games that you play the Dreamcast for. It's an unbelievable experience, and this is my copy that I've had since I was a kid. One of the few games that I actually kept all this time. You can't have a Dreamcast collection without Shenmue, one of the best gaming experiences from the era, to be honest, and it hasn't aged that well, truth be told. It's a great game though. It's still a great game, and I really do enjoy playing through it every couple years or so, and we're still waiting on Shenmue 4, so hopefully that'll happen one of these days. So these are two Dreamcast games that are not like the others that we have over there. They come with their individual boxes because they've got extra stuff inside of them. Seaman and Alien Front Online are two of the few Dreamcast games that feature a microphone, so you can actually plug that into your Dreamcast controller and use it. And it's super bizarre, but I really, really like collecting stuff like this, the weird stuff, you know. Legend of Dragoon is one of the best games I've ever played in my entire life, and it's one of the best RPGs on the PlayStation 1. It desperately needs a remaster, and I don't think I'm alone in that thought. I love the music in this game. I've done several covers on some of the great tunes that were composed in this video game here. Really one of the better experiences on the PlayStation 1 in my opinion, and I think you should definitely check it out if you haven't done so already. I had to grab all three Tekken games on the PlayStation 1. They're such great fighting games. I've finally completed every mainline Tekken game, meaning that I've got Tekken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's just a really cool miniature thing to do when you're going for a collection. Obviously, I'm never going to be able to collect every single PlayStation 1 game in my entire life, but I can accomplish many things like that. So I've got every Tekken game. It's a great fighting game. These three are really, really fun to play on the PS1. I had to get this one too because Soul Calibur is my favorite fighting game series of all time, and this is the precursor to that. It's called Soul Blade. It's very clunky, like most games on the PlayStation 1 are, but it's still very much playable, and it's really kind of cool to revisit what Soul Calibur was eventually going to be. And on the back here it says, if you thought Tekken 2 was tough, take a stab at this. Get it? Because there's weapons in this game instead of fists. So up here I've got pretty much every controller box that I've got in the last 2 years, and I decided let's just put it on display up there. That's a cool place to put it. Mostly because I'm haunted by this vivid memory that I had as a kid opening Pokemon Gold, getting it from Walmart, bringing it home, and immediately throwing it away in the box. I threw the box away. I'm haunted by that. So as a result, anytime I get anything new video game related, I keep the box, and most of them I put up here on display just because I think it looks cool. In this cabinet right here, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? I'm a big fan of fighting games. I'm also a big fan of arcade sticks. I've collected a lot of them that are on a per console basis. The Green Goblin Dreamcast arcade stick. It's just so freaking cool that we got this in the United States at all, and there are so many great fighting games for the Dreamcast. This is a great way to play those games, and I love the micro switches in this controller. You can see that this is not stock. It doesn't really match the color or anything like that, but I just wanted a bat top because I've got big, gigantic monkey hands, and I prefer the bat top over the ball top. Now here's something that we did not get in the United States. This is the twin stick for the Sega Dreamcast. There's a couple of games that utilize this on the system, most notably Virtual On, and also a really cool third-person or first-person shooter called Outrigger by Sega that I really, really enjoy. Micro switches in this guy too, just like the other arcade stick on the Sega Dreamcast. I had it shipped from Japan, and it wasn't that bad of a price at all. And I just really enjoy stuff like this. That's one thing that's gonna be a theme in this video, is you're gonna really see a lot of hardware stuff. That's kind of my main area of collecting, just because if you use this, you're getting an experience that you wouldn't get with just a controller, and I freaking love that. Neo Geo arcade stick, such a legendary piece of retro gaming equipment that we have right here. This is kind of like a foreshadowing to what we're going to be seeing a little later on in the video, but of course I had to pick this up for use with some classic Neo Geo hardware. Foreshadowing, foreshadowing, foreshadowing. Okay, so we're moving on to the computer area, but first, up here I've got this really cool picture frame, digital picture frame from Frameo. You can pair it with another one. So for Christmas, I got Miss Emily, my girlfriend, one of these and so we can send pictures back and forth to each other, and that's really, really cool. This is from a company called Divoom, and this is the Pixoo 64. I've got my YouTube stuff on there right now, so I'm almost at 1 million views. And it's really nice to have this up here to kind of monitor where I'm at and remind me where I'm at on YouTube. I'm really proud of the fact that I've collected every Pokemon game from my childhood. I kind of stopped getting into it after the 3rd generation, but the first 2 gens are definitely my bread and butter when it comes to Pokemon. I really, really loved those games as a kid. And right here I've got this really cool Game Boy Advance that's been kind of modified with a new screen and everything, so it looks really, really cool. So whenever I want to go back and revisit these games, I've got a really nice green Game Boy to do so, and I really love that color too. I also keep stuff over here that I just don't know where else to put, like the Super Game Boy right there in case I want to throw any of those games into the Super Nintendo. Okay, so here is my computer setup. This is where I edit all the videos, including the one that you're watching right now. It's not the beefiest computer for gaming. I've got a 3060 in there. I'm pretty sure it's still an i5 processor. I got 32 gigabytes of RAM, which is enough for what I do. And I mostly use this for editing YouTube videos. I do occasionally get on Steam and play some games. You can see it's kind of a mess. That's kind of by design. It's a curated mess. It's very messy, but I know where everything is, and that's kind of like how I like to operate, pretty much. But we've got some controllers over here from NYXI that I use for occasional gaming. There's a new one that they just came out with, which I will be doing a video on very soon as well. And I've got some 8-bit Do controllers. You know, this is also a really cool sign that was gifted to me by my girlfriend, Emily. This one's very similar to the one that we saw before, except now this one just says Sega with the Sonic the Hedgehog logo on there too. Just a really cool thing to put on your desk, and that's exactly where it is. Over here we have pretty much my entire physical video game collection. We'll talk about that here in a second, but I just want to show you guys this because it's super cool. I played music, video game music, at a retro video game convention here in Conway, Arkansas, and I saw a gentleman watching me who was super into it, and he came up to me in between songs and he shook my hand. He was wearing a Resident Evil shirt, and he said, "I'm just a big fan of what you do, that's super cool." And turns out it was Joe White. Joe White did the voice of Chris Redfield in the Resident Evil remake on the GameCube. And so he just came up and we had this really cool conversation, and he signed this for me, and it says, "To Travis, I am now your biggest fan, Joe White." And it's just a super, super cool thing that happened, and I'll remember it for the rest of my life. And just to have this framed with his signature and that memory is really, really freaking cool. On the top shelf here, we've got the Steel Battalion controller, which I did a separate video on if you want to learn more about that. Super cool mech game for the original Xbox. Now, I mentioned previously that I was a big Dreamcast fan, and as a result, I really kind of missed out on a lot of the original Xbox library. It came to my attention that there are a lot of Xbox games that have this badge that says only on Xbox. So like I did with the Tekken series, I thought it would be fun to do a collection of miniature collecting of sorts, and so I decided I was going to get every original Xbox game that has that badge that's quite frankly worth having. So not a lot of, you know, football and baseball sports stuff in this collection, mostly stuff like this, but it's been super fun to kind of jump into the catalog of Xbox games and find stuff that's really cool that I never knew existed. And I think that's probably one of the best things about collecting retro video games, is that there are so many great games that just flew on by that you totally missed. I've been getting into vinyl a lot recently. In addition to the Xbox games here, I've got a pretty decent vinyl collection. And most of this is, you know, acoustic guitar stuff. There's some Steely Dan in here, some Leo Kottke, Michael Hedges, some of the stuff that I really enjoy, but there's also a lot of super cool video game related things on vinyl here. This one is the Ghost of Tsushima soundtrack, which is a fantastic game for the PlayStation 5. Probably the best looking game on the system, to be quite frank. And in addition to that, we've got the Panzer Dragoon Saga. We got Panzer Dragoon. I've almost said Panzer Dragoon Saga. This is Panzer Dragoon, the first game. And the artwork in this is freaking phenomenal, man. It's so cool. And vinyl's coming back in a big way, and I can definitely see why. It's super cool to have this artwork with these vinyl records here. I'm a super big fan of Castlevania, the 16-bit games, and I've got Symphony of the Night on vinyl because why wouldn't I? It's one of the best video game soundtracks ever made, and to have that on vinyl is extremely cool. And if I'm going that direction, I might as well get the Rondo of Blood soundtrack, which is probably one of the best which is probably one of the best, if not the best, 16-bit Castlevania games ever. It's such an amazing game with an amazing soundtrack. Minecraft soundtrack, because it's heavily inspiring, and it's really nice to throw on when you're cleaning the house, just to have the Minecraft music. And of course, my beautiful girlfriend Emily hooked me up with the Spirited Away soundtrack, which is absolutely breathtaking. Also a great thing to throw on when you're just wanting to vibe while you're cleaning the house. This is my cat Kanoko. I named her after the main character of a wonderful PS2 game called Oni. She is heavily featured in pretty much every video that I do that involves B-roll, because she cannot help herself but be involved in things like that. And she's a really chill cat. She's a very precious little chicken. So Castlevania 64, this is probably one of the games that I played most as a kid. I've beaten this game more times than I can count. It gets a lot of unnecessary hate. I should probably do a dedicated video on this because I love it so much and I know a lot about it. One of my favorite N64 games. It's just a great platformer, and a lot of people are upset that it doesn't play like the 16-bit Castlevanias, and then it kind of takes a little bit of a trip away from that sort of style. But for an N64 3D platformer, it's actually really great. My favorite video game ever made, severely underrated N64 game called Hybrid Heaven. It's basically a 90s action movie, which is why I love it so much. Aliens are trying to take over, you're a Secret Service agent, and they're trying to replace the president with a hybrid. So what makes that really interesting is not only are they cloning him, but they're making him extremely strong, which is really freaking scary. And it's a strategy game that's also a fighting game. So when you're fighting, you're in a room with one other monster and you're trying to fight, but instead of just throwing, punches and kicks with A and B, you pause time with A, and then you have a selection of moves that you can choose from. So it's very, very heavily based on strategy, and I think that's what I like about it. You can be a boxer, a kickboxer, you can do a bunch of grapple moves. It's a really, really crazy in-depth battle system, and I think a lot of people passed up on it, and it's by far my favorite video game I've ever played in my whole life. We've got some other stuff on this shelf, mainly 360 games. I've got a couple of Wii U games, some Switch stuff. Down here, we've got a few complete in-box Sega Genesis games. This was my first console as a kid, so naturally I wanted to grab some of the ones that I used to enjoy when I was a little kid, like Golden Axe, beaten that game several times. Mickey Mouse and the Castle of Illusion, back when licensed games were actually really, really good. This is like one of the best platformers I've ever played in my entire life. And I still go back and play it because the music is great and it heavily inspired me to make some of my own music. Can't have the Sega Genesis without Streets of Rage, the best beat 'em up ever made. Streets of Rage 2, and Streets of Rage 3. I love these games very, very much, and I still go back and play them all the freaking time. So in addition to keeping some games over here, I've also got a bunch of game guides. I just really like that kind of thing. With all these games, you can get on the internet and look up anything that you need to know, but it's just really nice to be able to pull anything off of the shelf in case you want to learn something about a game that's not in the manual. Prima's official strategy guide, I've got so many of those. This was the thing to do back in the day. If you needed to learn something about a game, or if you're struggling and you need to learn how to beat the game, you would find the Prima's official strategy guide. So naturally, I've got one for Hybrid Heaven. Some people might say that this is too much, but I think it's just right. I started collecting consoles like about 10 years ago, I would say, and I had a rule, and that rule was never spend over $100 on a retro video game console. I've broken that a couple times, but for the most part, I actually got all of this stuff for under $100 each. On the top row here, we've got the PlayStation 5, Nintendo Switch with this really cool NYXI controller that I've also done a video on if you want to check that out. And I just really like little stuff like this little plaque thing that says now playing, and currently Miss Emily and myself are playing The Last of Us Part 1. So it's also a great way to not have to take your game out of your collection and then put the disc in there and then put it back in the collection and take it back out again. It's just there. So when I'm done playing this, I'll just take the disc out of the PlayStation and slap it back in there and put it back with the others. Let's look at the second row. It's mostly HDMI consoles on this row here. We've got the Wii U, PlayStation 3, and the Xbox 360. PlayStation 3 is my most played out of these three, but the Wii U is really cool. honestly. And there's a lot of really underrated cool games on that system. And the bathroom is on the other side of this wall. So if I need to go to the bathroom, I can take this with me. Yes, I'm actually gonna put that in the video. So let's take a look at this over here. This is a really cool component switcher that I actually got on Amazon, and this is some new old stock. It's a RadioShack switcher. It's actually really, really good. I think there's 4 inputs and 1 output on this, which is great for stuff like the Wii U, or any other thing that needs to be a component. Now we're getting into the retro systems on this shelf right here. We've got the Sega Saturn, the first Japanese Model 1 right there, Sony PlayStation, and the N64 with the Everdrive, as well as the Super Nintendo Junior, which I successfully modified into an RGB SCART output myself. I'm really proud of that because I suck at soldering. We've got the FXPAK Pro in there too. You'll notice the theme of this stuff over here is that everything is set up to be played pretty much at any time. And I like to be able to have a big selection of things that I want to play. So that's why most of these consoles are hooked up with ODEs, which is optical drive emulation. So these CD drives for these respected consoles have been taken out and replaced with a device that can read games off of an SD card. So it's a great way to experience the entire library of a system because you have it all on each SD card. And it's a super great way to jump into games that you've never played before, give something a try before you buy, that sort of situation. We saw a smaller version of this earlier. This is a SCART switcher that I got from AliExpress. I used to have a really fancy SCART switcher from Shiny Bow, and it was 6 in and 2 out. This is 10 in and 2 out. So I upgraded because I had more consoles that were RGB SCART capable. The video quality on this is fantastic. You would think coming from AliExpress it wouldn't be that great, but they actually did a really good job, and it's not really that expensive. So if you're looking into getting your consoles hooked up with RGB SCART, the highest video quality for your analog consoles, I highly recommend this from AliExpress. We've got the Sega Genesis with the Sega CD Model 1. I actually never had a Sega CD growing up, nor did I know that it was a thing. These 2 Neo Geo systems right here. We've got the Neo Geo AES with the Neo SD, as well as the Neo Geo CD that has been equipped with the SD card reader mod. Same sort of situation like an ODE. And of course the Sega Dreamcast down here, the white one that's hooked up with the GDMU to read your games off of that SD card. We're gonna look at the last row and get down on our haunches just like so. Nintendo Wii, original Xbox, PlayStation 2, Nintendo GameCube with the Game Boy player, as well as the core graphics with the Super HD System 3. My theme for this is I hate controller cables because of the cats and the fact that it's such a mess when you're trying to play multiple consoles in one evening. So everything that you see here has been hooked up with some sort of wireless controller, whether it's from 8BitDo, RetroBit, or NYXI, anything like that. You'll see that most of these consoles, except for really the core graphics, has its own respected wireless controller. I like to keep it that way. You'll also notice that it's kind of a rat's nest back here, but that's kind of by design. I have a problem, and that problem is that I change things a lot. I'm a tinkerer by nature, so I'm always back here moving things around, trying to make it the best that it can be. And right now it's obviously not in that state because there's cables and stuff everywhere, but despite what you are seeing, I actually strive to keep it cable managed as much as I can. It just doesn't always work out that way because admittedly, this is a lot. It's a lot of stuff to keep up with. There's a lot of video cables, a lot of power cables, and everything is hooked up ready to go pretty much at any time. I just have to turn it on. It is a little bit of some management and I still have a lot of work to do, but it's coming together slowly but surely. Imagine your grandmother and her CRT television. This is exactly what she would have, something like this. And I like it because it's very vertical, which allows me to store a bunch of stuff, right? So right here front and center, this is my heavy duty PVM right here. This is the one that I use quite a bit. This is an Olympus OEV203, which is a rebranded Sony Trinitron PVM. I can't remember the exact model number, but This was also used in a hospital, and that's where I got it from, and I've been using this for several years now. This is my main retro gaming TV, and I love it very, very much. Here, we've got PlayStation games, everything from the PS2 on up to the PlayStation 5, and I've got some really, really cool ones that I've spent a lot of time with over the years, like this one, Oni. The cat that you saw earlier, Kanoko, that's the main character's name, so I figured she's kind of an anime cat in the sense that she can't keep her mouth closed. I don't know, it just seemed fitting at the time. And this is one of my favorite games ever. I played the crap out of this as a kid, and it's such a fun adventure type game where you can kick and punch and shoot guns and stuff like that, and it's a hell of an experience on the PS2. So you can't have a PS2 collection without the Dragon Ball Z Budokai games, and I've got the first three. That's the three games that I really played as a kid. My neighbor used to have this game, and every time a new one would come out, Budokai 1, 2, and 3, I'd go to his house and we'd play the crap out of these games. We've got so many hours in these, and they're such great games, and they're amazing fighting games for the PS2, and I'm super stoked to have all three of them in this collection here. You gotta love the Grand Theft Auto series, and I actually did an unboxing of this on my channel. This was brand new in the box when I got it, and this is all three of the main games for the PS2 here. We've got Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. Vice City was my first big game that I really got into, but then San Andreas came out, and my God, what a game changer. Me and my buddy Jonathan played the crap out of Vice City and San Andreas when we were kids, and looking back on it, maybe our parents shouldn't have bought us these games, but we turned out all right. They're still great games too. One of the great things about collecting old video games is the fact that you can find really cool things like this, which is the HD remaster of Final Fantasy X and X-2. This is a much larger game than most PS3 games, but what I'm getting at is when you find stuff like this in retro stores, oftentimes they're about the same price as the regular game, and it's because they take up a lot of real estate and they want them out of the store. So you can get, you know, big box bundles like the Grand Theft Auto trilogy and this for a really good price if you're looking for it, just because they take up extra room. This used to be kind of an underrated gem, but now certain YouTubers have kind of let that cat out of the bag. This is 3D Dot Game Heroes by Atlas. This is a Zelda clone through and through, but the graphics on this game, especially for the time, it's unbelievable how great this game looks, and it's so much fun to play, and I would kind of rather play this than Zelda pretty much any day of the week. It's got a great soundtrack. From Software worked on this game as well, which is really kind of surprising looking at the artwork of it, but it's a great game. Really, really love that one a lot. In addition to games and stuff, I keep, you know, odd things up here. Like I've got the Sega Saturn 3D pad, I've got the Japanese one, as well as the American variant of that. There are so many great games on the Sega Saturn that utilize these controllers. This is pretty much the precursor to the Dreamcast controller, so it's really cool to have both variants of that. So up here on the top shelf, kind of hidden away, that's holding my PS2 game collection up. This is the Sega Nomad. It's a Sega Genesis in handheld form factor, and I actually found this on the Facebook Marketplace for $100. And I've had it for a very, very long time. I drove about 45 minutes out of my way to pick it up, and I've recently upgraded it with this 3D printed battery pack from Laser Bear Industries, and it's got some of these lithium 18650 batteries in there. So it's good to go. And I've also got a screen mod in there as well. It's a really, really cool handheld, and I'm super stoked to have this one. No video game room is perfect without a good sound system, and that's what I've got down here. We're gonna go down we go. Now we're down here. Okay, so in here, I've got my record player, which isn't anything fancy. I think I got it on Amazon or something like that, but it sounds pretty darn good through this sound system. This is a Denon receiver. I don't remember the model number or anything like that. It doesn't have HDMI or anything like that. It's just an analog kind of connection here, but I've got some really nice speakers and a subwoofer. I've got some Infinity speakers that were gifted to me by my buddy Scott. And when we get rolling in here on some retro video games, it sounds good. It sounds pretty nice, actually. These Sony speakers are just kind of the secondary speakers that I have in here. There's the center one. They're kind of small, but they do get pretty loud. So in addition to the record player, I've got the receiver down there, and I've got everything connected to where I can listen to the analog signal from the retro video games. I've also got it to where I can listen to the vinyl record player. and a couple of other things too. This looks like a giant rat's nest mangled mess of wires over here, but this is where I keep most of my controller extensions ready to grab whenever I need them, in case I do need them, and sometimes I do for something like the arcade sticks and stuff like that. It's nice to be able to pretty much set up whatever I want on this comfy couch over here, and that's what those extension cables are for. Granny cabinet comes with all these different compartments over here. This is the area that I keep all the really weird peripherals that you don't use all the time, you know, like light guns, for example. I've also got some fishing rod controllers. If you've never used the Dreamcast fishing rod controller with Sega Bass Fishing, you are missing out on an incredible gaming experience. So over here, same sort of situation as before. I've just got a bunch of random stuff like light guns and stuff hidden away in this little compartment. And right here, ottoman to put your drinks and stuff on. You can also prop your feet up. But in here is a gigantic mess of other controllers and stuff like that, peripherals and cables and wires that I might need at any given time. And it's conveniently hidden away inside of this ottoman, which I think is really, really cool. And over here we've got the main TV. This is my LG C1. It's an OLED television, and it's super nice, man. It looks really, really good for everything from the PS5 all the way down to like the NES. It's a really, really, really crisp, clear OLED display. The most expensive retro video game thing in this entire room. I love the RetroTink 4K, but my God, that $750 price tag stings to this day. You can pretty much hook up any console that you have, whether it be an analog signal or HDMI. Everything goes to the RetroTink 4K before it hits this TV, and it's super cool to take something like the PlayStation 3 and upscale it to 4K. It looks amazing. There's lots of things you can do with this remote. You know, you can go into the menu and you can go all through these different profiles and advanced settings. You can add all sorts of different scan lines and CRT masks and mess with adding HDR and all sorts of crazy stuff like that that you probably would never think about doing with a retro video game signal like this. But with the RetroTink 4K, you can do it, and then more. There's always more. And as a result, I spend a ton of time just tinkering with the settings instead of actually playing the games. But like I said, I'm a tinkerer by trade, so I can't really help myself. I mentioned before that I have a lot of wireless controllers, like this one from RetroFighters. This is my go-to controller for the N64. You know, a lot of people dog on the original N64 controller for, you know, acceptable reasons, but my main thing is that my hands are too big. So they've got the three-prong thing on that old N64 controller, and my knuckle always rubs against that left prong so much that it kind of is uncomfortable. So I kind of had to give up on the original N64 controller, but these are such a great alternative, especially if you have four for a night of Mario Tennis. Underneath this entertainment center, this is where I keep pretty much all of those wireless controllers in here, and I've got them all hooked up, ready to go pretty much at any time with these USB hubs that I have in here. So every single one of these controllers can be hooked up and charged. So I never have to worry about, oh man, I can't play the Sega CD right now because my Genesis controller isn't charged or anything like that. I don't have to worry about that. Everything has its own dedicated USB cable for charging, and everything's pretty much ready to go anytime, which is freaking cool. This is actually a 3D printed action figure. This is a character that's based on me, a harp guitar wielding retro video game nerd. This design was done by Sean DeBurka, who is a brilliant graphic designer and fellow harp guitar player, so it's really cool to have him do this for me. This was 3D printed by my friend Billy. This is to kind of go with my brand new album that I just got done recording. We're in the process of mixing and mastering right now, but it's called The Games We Play. And I've never done anything like this before, but this is a double album full of original acoustic songs as well as a bunch of arrangements of classic video game tunes that I grew up with. So, you know, by the time you're watching this video later on, it probably is already out. So make sure you check the link in the description if you want to check that out. I'd really appreciate you guys listening to it. I think you'll really like it. And another really cool decoration in the video game room is Craig. My buddy Jonathan seemed to really want his name to be Craig, so that's why we landed on that. But this was so fun to put together. My beautiful girlfriend Emily got it for me, and we've spent, I think it was like, what, 2 weeks putting this together off and on. It was a challenge. At some points, I think there's like, what, 1,700 pieces to this, but it's super cool to see it, you know, finally come together, and we did it together, and that's a really cool thing that we can always cherish. And his mouth is open. It looks really good. It's super, super high quality. And it's really nice to just kind of have him sit there because we are cat people. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was a glimpse into my video game room slash living room. I wanted to do something like this for a long time. I really hope you guys enjoyed watching it. Be sure to check the link in the description for more videos like this on my channel. I really appreciate you guys subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.